Okay, everybody, welcome back. It is now time for the Pac-12 football schedule ranking. I did the other four conferences already. You can go watch those, or I'll put a card up in the corner here. Create a playlist, and you can just go watch all of them at once if you have not seen them. We start with the Washington State Huskies. They have the easiest schedule in the Pac-12. They have a score of a 66. They were 7-6 last year. They have four tough games, which are 8-win opponents or better from last season, and they have 7 5-win or less teams, easy teams from last season. Their record is as follows: at Colorado State, or their schedule, at Colorado State, Wisconsin, NCU, Oregon State, at UCLA, Arizona, at Oregon, at Arizona State, Stanford, at Cal, Colorado, and at Washington. The second easiest schedule in the Pac-12 belongs to UCLA. They have Coastal Carolina, at San Diego State, North Carolina Central, at Utah, Washington, at Oregon State, at Stanford, Colorado, at Arizona, Arizona State, and at USC, and Cal at home. They have a score of a 69. They were 9-4 last season. Their toughest games are Coastal Carolina at home. According to last year's results, I know these teams will improve and get worse. But at Utah, at Oregon State, and at USC. They have 6 games versus 5-win or less opponents. The third easiest schedule in the Pac-12 belongs to Oregon. Potential winner this season. They have a score of a 71. They were 10-3 last year. They are at Texas Tech, at Washington, at Utah, USC, and Oregon State are their 5 toughest games, and they have 6 games versus 5 or less win opponents. They play Portland State first in the season. Then they're at Texas Tech. They have Hawaii, Colorado, at Stanford, at Washington, Washington State, at Utah, Cal, USC, at Arizona State, and Oregon State at home. So a nice mix there for them. Score of a 71. Next up is their rival, Oregon State. They come in with the tied for 7th. There are 3 teams tied with a 74 score. Oregon State went 10-3 last season. They have Utah, UCLA, and Washington all at home, and then they're at Oregon, and only 5 games versus 5-win opponents or less. They are at San Jose State, UCD at home, San Diego State at home, at Washington State, Utah, at Cal, UCLA at home, at Arizona, at Colorado, Stanford, Washington, and at Oregon. All right, next up is USC. They are tied with a 74. They went 11-3 last season. Their tough games, they have 5 of them. At Notre Dame, Utah, Washington at home, at Oregon, and UCLA. They have 6 opponents with 5 wins or less from last season. So there's your bowl right there. San Jose State was 7-5, decent. They have Nevada at home, Stanford at home, at Arizona State, and at Colorado. Look at them, wow. And then Tech on Arizona, 6-0 right there until they go to Notre Dame. That's going to be a toughie. And then Utah at home right after that, at Cal, Washington at home, and then they're at Oregon before they have UCLA at home. So a brutal 3-game stretch there to end for the USC. Utah is also tied with them for number 7, the number 7 hardest schedule in the Pac-12. They have Florida at home. They are at Baylor, and they have Weber State. UCLA at home at Oregon State. Cal at USC. Oregon. Arizona State at Washington. Oh, so I mistaked there. One of them is going to be Arizona, but they didn't have a good record. And Colorado at home. So tough one there, but 74 score. Their hardest ones are UCLA at Oregon State, at USC, Oregon, and at Washington, and they have 5 games versus 5 or less win opponents from last season. Here is Arizona. They have Northern Arizona at home, at Mississippi State, UTEP at Stanford, Washington at USC, at Washington State, Oregon State at home, UCLA at home, at Colorado, Utah at home, and then at Arizona State. That adds up to a score of a 79, and that's the 6th hardest schedule in the Pac-12. They're tough ones. They have 6 of them. At Mississippi State, Washington, at USC, Oregon State, UCLA, and Utah, all at home, though. And then they have 5 games versus 5 win opponents or less from last season. They went 5-7 last season, so that's the difference there from the previous schedule. Stanford has the 5th hardest schedule in the Pac-12. They have a score of an 80. They went 3-9 last season. They are at Hawaii, at USC, Sacramento State, and then Arizona at home, Oregon at home, at Colorado, UCLA, Washington, at Washington State, at Oregon State, Cal, and Notre Dame. And their hardest are, they have 6 as well, at USC, Oregon, UCLA, Washington, all at home, but at Oregon State, and then Notre Dame. And they have 5 teams versus 5 wins or less from last season. Washington is your number 4 hardest schedule. They have a score of an 83. They were 11-2 last season. They have Boise State at home, a 10-win team from last season. Tulsa at Michigan State. Cal at Arizona. Oregon, Arizona State. At Stanford, at USC. Utah at Oregon State, and Washington State. And the 8 win or better teams they will play from last season. Boise State, Oregon, at USC, Utah, and at Oregon State. They have 6 games versus 5 win or better or less teams from last season, and that could be a bowl right there for them. And then the rest of them games could determine how many wins they get. Arizona State is number 3 with a score of an 85. They were 3-9 last season. They have SUU. Is that Southern Utah University? I don't know. I forget. Oklahoma State at home, Fresno at home, USC at home. Then they're at Cal. They have Colorado. So, man, this could be a good start for Arizona State. But then at Washington State, at Utah, at UCLA, Oregon, and then Arizona to finish their schedule. Their hardest are Fresno, USC, at Washington, at Utah, at UCLA, and Oregon. They have only 4 games versus 5 win or less opponents from last season. And here we go. The 2nd hardest schedule in the Pac-12 belongs to Cal. They are at North Texas. They have Auburn at home, Idaho, at Washington, Arizona State, Oregon State, at Utah, USC, at Oregon, Washington State, at Stanford, at UCLA. They're toughies. They have 6 as well. At Washington, Oregon State, at Utah, USC, Oregon, and UCLA. Can they win some of them games? They have 4 games versus 5 win or less opponents. And your easiest schedule for the Pac-12 belongs to, or the toughest schedule, belongs to Coach Prime and his Colorado Buffaloes. They are at TCU, a playoff team from last season. They have Nebraska at home, Colorado State at home. They're at Oregon. They have USC at home. They're at Arizona State. They have Stanford at home, but then they're at UCLA. They have Oregon State at home, Arizona, at Washington State, and then at Utah to finish their season. They have a score of an 88. They were 1-11 last season. Their toughest games are at TCU, at Oregon, USC, at UCLA, Oregon State, and at Utah. They have 5 games versus 5 wins or less opponents from last season. It's going to be tough for Coach Prime. A lot of people are saying they're going to have a big turnaround from 1-11. Let's not forget the rest of this conference is pretty darn good, and it's hard for me. I think my favorite right now is between Oregon and USC, but man, Utah always wins the dang thing. So who knows? It's one of them conferences. It's hard to. Are they going to beat each other up? Will they get a playoff contender? I think it's going to be tough for anyone to get through with one loss or undefeated. So there you have it. Remember to like the video, share, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. And have a great day. Thank you, everybody.